Thank you very much for coming together as a family. And family is family regardless of how many friends you have. Family always comes back together, and I believe that the love of family is inside. You can love someone because they are good to you, they're kind, you work with them, but family doesn't need to meet any of those qualities. Sometimes you get so irritated with family you can hit them, but you love them anyway. And we came from a wonderful, wonderful 5 sisters and a mother of those 5 sisters who was a very, very strong woman. And I think because of the strength of Caroline Jez, we are still here today. I really do. So thank you, everybody, for coming and taking.
Home. A place with your family. A place with your memories. A place where polka music blared through radios and boomboxes. A place where one piece of broken cement could be used as a pitcher's mound, and another as home plate, and where windows are not baseball bat proof. A place where a tree that once met my chest is now where the same tree towers over everything. Everybody's concept of home is different, and even though you may move elsewhere, your original home likely still has a place in your heart. For me, this is that place. A place of industry, history, and family. A place that is ever changing. A place in the region. The North Side. Hammond, Indiana, a mid-sized city of about 75,000, seated at the crossroads of America on the south shore of Lake Michigan, in the shadow of the metropolis of Chicago, and at the northwesternmost point of an area known as the Calumet region, a gritty blue-collar assortment of cities and sprawling suburban towns that serve as a microcosm of working-class Middle America. Places like Gary, a city once referred to as the Magic City of Steel. The Twin City of East Chicago, Indiana Harbor, which includes the historic, yet disappearing, century-old planned worker community of Marktown. And Whiting, the quirky, charming, little city on the lake. To the south are the suburbs, including the towns of Highland, Munster, Griffith, the Villes, Scherer, and Merrillville, and the county seat of Crown Point. Incorporated in 1884, Hammond was named after George Hammond, the inventor of the refrigerated boxcar, and the founder of the massive Stateline slaughterhouse and meatpacking plant, just north of what is now the city's downtown. Hammond hailed from Detroit, and he had little interest in the booming Northwest Indiana settlement. Instead, it was Marcus Toll, himself an investor in the slaughterhouse, who is often credited as the founder of Hammond, as well as the city's first mayor. Originally an almost exclusively German community, many Eastern Europeans came to the region in the years following World War I. By the 1920s, Eastern European immigrants, specifically Slavic and Polish, were the majority population, especially in North Hammond. This record of donations to St. Casimir Church from the early 1920s shows a consistent lineup of Eastern European names throughout the North Side. Emanating the smoke and stench of industry, the North Side was, and remains, the backbone of the city of Hammond's economy. Featuring the self-proclaimed largest bar soap factory in the world, a nearly 115-year-old corn milling plant, producers of the well-known Amazo odor that wafts across the North Side on the north wind, a chemical factory, a manufacturer of railroad car accessories, a steel bar manufacturer, multiple trucking and transport companies, and a defunct chain manufacturing plant. All of this while neighboring the nation's 7th largest oil refinery and 2 of the largest steel mills and integrated steelmaking complexes, many of whom have been poisoning the region's air, water, soil, and food supply for decades, as well as the now-vanished mills of neighboring South Chicago. The North Side has always been populated with hard workers, people that never have a lot, but give a lot, and work hard for that lot. And that's where my story begins. And for that, we consult our family historian, my second cousin, Patricia Bengert.
Well, first of all, we definitely were from North Hammond. We didn't associate with South Hammond at all. The demarcation line was Holman, and I think it's 165th. There used to be Prince Castle over there, and we would go there for ice cream. And anything south of that was considered elitist and the wealthy people.
Great-grandmother Caroline and great-grandfather Joseph were the founders of our family in America. Joseph emigrated from Poland, and he met Caroline in nearby Calumet City.
Grandma's sister married the mayor of Calumet City. Calumet City was wide open. They had burlesque shows, strip shows. It was just, and her sister and her husband, who was the mayor, either owned or ran or had an influence over this one bar. And Grandma worked there at night. And every weekend, my grandfather would come traveling from Chicago to Calumet City to get liquor. And they would talk. Grandma herself told me the story. And she said one day he just said to her, "You know, this is getting to be a long trip. I think we should just get married." And they did. It never occurred to them not to get married. You know, you met somebody and you got married. And that person had to be Polish and Catholic.
They married and had 5 daughters. The best and nicest way to describe these matriarchs would be strong-willed. Each one of them grew up and lived their whole lives in the region. The ladies' strength was exemplified by how they lived their lives and how long they lived. Dorothy, 88 years. My grandmother Bernice, 91 years. Lottie, 95 years. Josephine, 4 months shy of 97 years. Only one, Nettie, died young, passing away in her 50s. Bernice worked as a welder at the old Northside Taylor chain plant and was briefly seen hard at work in a 1980s documentary about the plant. Josephine worked at Eastman Kodak and the local Carmelite home, not retiring until the age of 86 and still driving and maintaining her home well into her 90s. All the while, they exemplified the different time from which they came. Lottie was a homemaker, never lived at an address other than on the block where she grew up, and never learned to drive a car. Dorothy was the only one of the 5 to receive a high school education.
And Nettie went to work before she was old enough to work, and so she used Aunt Joe's birth certificate. And all her life she had friends who called her Joe. All her life.
Together they faced the devastating perils life can bring, like the death of children and the deaths of their husbands, including my grandfather, Charles, at age 38, leaving behind a mortgage and 4 preteen children.
He didn't have any girlfriend other than your grandma. And he would try everything, and she just, nothing. But she teased him enough that he knew there was some interest there. She just wouldn't. So she told me the story of how he wrote her from Europe and said that he's met this girl in Hungary, and if Aunt Bernice didn't think that she was going to be with him, he was going to bring this girl home. Well, she changed her mind real fast, let me tell you. And he adored her. He adored her. Anything she wanted, this house exists as it is because of Aunt Bernice. She did anything she wanted. That was okay. Anything she wanted. Oh my goodness, yeah. But they had a neat relationship, and that's why it was so sad when he died. It was not expected at all. He was sick. Came home from work. Went to the doctor's office. They told him to take a deep breath, and he died. Oh. She had to go to work for the first time. She hadn't worked. She went to Taylor Chain at the end of the street. But that is where she met Alex, who was the second love of her life. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Along with their toughness came hard-headedness and stubbornness. Restaurant food was always just okay. Family disagreements could last for weeks, months, or even years. And as long as she was alive, it was Great-Grandma Caroline who called the shots.
She and Aunt Jo got into some kind of argument. And so she went somewhere. And I understand this was not the only time. And it was getting dark. And everybody was worried. My mother told me this story. So all 5 girls went 5 different directions looking for their mother. She ruled the roost. She did. She loved the family. But she was so sure that she was right all the time. It sort of had to be her way. I remember Aunt Josephine telling me this story. She met a man whose family was from a different part of Poland. And she dated him. When she went out with this guy, when she came back, Grandma had locked the door. So she couldn't get in because she was dating this guy whose family was from the wrong part of Poland. So if that tells you anything about matriarchal society.
I spent the first 20 years of my life in Hammond, and I have memories that I hope to hold on to for the rest of my life. Memories of spending all day on a baseball field, breathing in the pungent stink of industrial chemicals. Memories of blizzards and school snow days thanks to those blizzards, resulting in spending the entire day outside. Memories of family gatherings at the local Polish inn that has barely changed since it opened over 70 years ago, and still serves the best Polish food on this side of the state line. Or at a local pizza chain, which makes quite possibly the greatest sauce in the entire world. Or at this Hegwish joint, when it was called Godini's. Memories of the famous spuds and endless fun of the Highland and Calumet City Shakey's, and birthday parties at the original Celebration Station in Merrillville. Memories of quick shopping trips to Reliable, or filling up the shopping cart at Ultra. Memories of hamburgers as big as my face, and eating them from the metal chairs of the local mall cafe, which was just a short walk, past the Court of Lions, to the unforgettable aroma of the greatest chocolate on earth. Memories of being barely able to see over that counter. Memories of the greatest butter cookies in the world, from a legendary 100-year-old Hammond bakery. The list goes on. And it all started on the corner of a quiet residential area in North Hammond, in this 106-year-old house. To me, this will always be my grandma's house. But long before then, it was the center of my ancestors' lives.
This house that we're sitting in. If my grandfather came back from the dead, he'd not recognize it.
So much has changed here. Walls have been removed, rooms have expanded, and family have come and gone. Yet some little things still remain. This mirror has hung in this exact spot for over 50 years, while everything else around it has changed. This used to be my grandma's room. She was born in this room in 1921. She lived most of her life in this house, eventually taking ownership with her husband, Charles. She took care of it and made sure it was her ideal home through and through. When my grandma and her sisters were growing up in this house, it wasn't where it is today. It was actually over there. My grandma convinced my grandpa to have the house moved 2 lots so she could have a corner house.
Your grandmother had it moved because she wanted it moved. There wasn't a reason in the world. This lot belonged to my grandma's sister, Sophie, and we bought it from her and moved the house over.
Do you remember when they moved the house?
Oh, all of us who helped got paid 10 cents an hour to help.
How did you help?
We helped tear down the walls inside, helped move the furniture, and yeah. And then they were on rollers. I don't remember how. I remember how they did it, but they rolled it over to this lot here, and then that built it here, and then we had just the empty lot. It makes no sense whatsoever, but that's what they did.
In those days, family stayed close, often in the same neighborhood, even after getting married and having children.
That's what you did. It was family.
So you never thought of moving?
Yeah, it never even occurred to them to move. I mean, you can't believe the criticism my mom and dad got. They moved the other side of home, and they moved all the way to Torrance. Yeah, you just stayed with your family, and that was pretty much true about all the families at that time, the Polish, the Catholic, And not only did I have family, but everybody, like if I walked down 142nd Street, every single person knew me. If I walked to St. Casimir School, every single person knew me. So if anything had happened, I just didn't belong back on the corner of 142nd and Dearborn. Somebody knew who I was, and yeah, we were. Everybody knew everyone, and that gave that familiarity. That gave that solidity. We used to walk to school, walk back for lunch, walk back after lunch, and walk back after school. No adult with us. There was nothing considered dangerous. We just were going to school, which is amazing.
After her husband's death, my grandma raised all of her children in this house. She walked from this house the 1 block to her job at Taylor Chain. When her kids started having kids, she enjoyed having all of them over to visit. She welcomed my mother and I to live in this house when I was only months old, and it's where I called home for 2 decades. She coordinated birthday parties and holiday gatherings. She celebrated here with her entire family when she turned 90. And it was in this same room where she was born and slept so many nights of her 91-year life that she died. It is now a shrine to that life. Photographs of her and her family, the 2 largest being of her and her husband. Years of gifts from her children, nieces, and grandchildren. Prayer cards from the funerals of those that passed before her. And my grandma's one vice, anything that played music. Stuffed animals, music boxes, statues, moving and stationary. She absolutely loved them. She would play at least a couple every morning after waking up. They filled 2 tables at her wake. At the end of the night, as a tribute to her, we played each one of them. The house next door was built in 1921 and will always be my Aunt Lottie's house. She and her husband Walter spent 62 married years in this house. It was a part of our family's life for over 90 years. The first home to many aunts and cousins, and in her later years, to my great-grandmother Caroline.
The houses were so close at the time that if you had your hands out both ways, you could touch walls. And we were told the story over and over and over, how Grandpa Jess would walk the streets and collect all kind of building materials. And he built these 2 houses. From building materials, he built the houses. How capable he must have been. Incredible. The house next door, 139, has barely changed. Barely changed. And when my mother and father and I left, Grandma moved upstairs. So that's where she lived. But Aunt Lottie was always there from her marriage on.
Historically, the 2 neighborhoods of the North Side, North Hammond and Robertsdale, were dotted with all the necessities of life. Corner grocery stores were commonplace, usually within walking distance of most residences. Nights out on the town could be had without going far. The North Side had the massive 41 outdoor drive-in theater, Madura's Danceland, the Roller Dome, and some of the best restaurants in the city, the entire region, and indeed, even the entire country. The most famous of which was Phil Schmidt's. From its original location in Roby to its home just north of 5 Points on Calumet Avenue, Phil Schmidt's served up countless numbers of relish plates, its legendary buttered fried perch, and its signature frog legs for nearly 100 years. Its elegant atmosphere and old-fashioned charm were known the world over, and hosted such well-known names as Babe Ruth and Bob Hope, in addition to generations of region families.
Across the street from us was something that definitely characterized North Hammond. It was a dance hall. Summer Gardens. Later it was called Comet Gardens because the Comet, which was a men's club, bought it. Your grandmother, Anne Bernice, her wedding was there. And I stood up to her wedding. I remember exactly. You walked through these gates and you walked in and there was the room where we hung up our coats. And then you got up on a platform and you walked to the back and that's where they served the food. And there was a platform on each side and all the dancing took place in the center, and outside there was huge gardens, and that's where we would go. There was a dance every single week, and there was never any danger, never any problems. Nothing. Oh, you could never do this. It was dark. When I was a little girl, I would sit up at the same window where I watched for my mother, and I would watch the dance and listen to the music. It was always Polish. Oh, everything was Polish. Everything.
Everything was here. There was no need to drive to surrounding towns. And if there was something you couldn't find on the north side, all you would need to do is take a short walk, drive, streetcar, or bus ride a couple minutes south to downtown Hammond. Take everything you love about a big city, the Chicago Loop, Midtown Manhattan, and shrink it down to an area no more than 8/10 of a square mile. Whatever you needed, whatever you wanted, however you wanted to spend your time, you would find it in downtown Hammond.
Oh, Hammond was thriving. Thriving. You could barely move around the streets.
Downtown Hammond was a hub of Northwest Indiana culture, and some very famous people have traveled through its streets. Actor Paul Newman came to downtown Hammond to stump for Senator Eugene McCarthy in 1968. Rival candidate Robert Kennedy followed, coming right down Homan Avenue to greet supporters. Aerosmith, Kiss, Sonny and Cher, and the Dave Clark Five are just a few of the world-famous musical acts you could find at the area's palatial theaters. For those who grew up in Hammond over the decades, the names of the locations still hold something dear.
Well, and everything was concentrated in downtown Hammond.
And these sidewalk sale days, the sidewalks were so crowded you could hardly find the sidewalk. There were so many people.
You couldn't even cross the street. It was so busy.
J.C. Penney's.
Rothschild and Hirsch clothing store.
The 4 dime stores. Woolworth's, Grant's, Kresge's, Newberry's.
Jack Fox.
Brayho's Coffee Shop. Milliken's.
Rosalie. Nagdeman's.
The Indiana Hotel.
The Homan Theater.
The Orpheum Theater.
The State Theater.
Paramount Theater.
Paramount Theaters. The Paramount, the Parthenon, the EC Minus.
Minus.
Shopping at Minus.
Minuses was considered upper class, so if you wanted something better, you went to Minuses.
They had the best crystal. They had the best bed linens. They had the best fabrics for sewing.
EC Minus was Hammond's most prominent upscale department store. Opening as a small hardware store in 1890, Minus stood strong on State Street until 1984. Minus proved so popular, a parking garage was built across Sibley Street to accommodate up to 562 cars. But as popular as Minus was, it was still dwarfed, at least in size, by the true centerpiece of downtown Hammond.
There was no place like Goldblatt's.
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 In Goldblatt's, you could buy anything. Anything.
Everybody loved Goldblatt's.
Not including the basement, Goldblatt's was 4 stories tall, an entire block in length, and was built strong enough for 2 additional stories that were never constructed. It was the second largest retail department store in the entire state of Indiana. Calumet Region historian Lance Trusty referred to Goldblatt's as the very heart and soul of Old Hammond. Originally built in 1890 as the Lion Store, the landmark store was rebuilt in the middle of the Roaring Twenties as the Kaufman and Wolf department store, and was purchased by the Goldblatt brothers of Chicago in 1931. It would remain the centerpiece of the downtown Hammond experience for nearly 50 years. The early days of one-stop shopping, with a nursery, music department, men's and women's clothing and shoes, the famous basement grocery store and deli, and lunch at the Walnut Dining Room. The store with the grand corner window displays, and where Ralphie first sees the Red Ryder BB gun in a world-famous Christmas story. That was Goldblatt's. Alright, well, technically that last part actually happened in a store in Cleveland, Ohio called Higbee's, but it was supposed to be Goldblatt's. Gene Shepard, the man who wrote the stories that inspired the film, grew up in this house, located on Cleveland Street in the Hessville neighborhood on Hammond's south side. A rebuilt version of the Warren G. Harding Elementary School mentioned in the film, where Shepard and his friends attended, remains open today. The Chinese restaurant at the end of the film was most likely supposed to be Camlan, which was located on Sibley Street, right behind Goldblatt's. Shepard's Christmas story takes place in the fictional Indiana town of Holmen, which was the name of Hammond's first settlers and of downtown Hammond's main street. According to Shepard, Holmen represented aspects of the cities of Hammond, East Chicago, Whiting, and Gary. Although every year since 2008, Hammond has been happy to call itself the home of the film, with an annual family-friendly exhibit at the Indiana Visitor Center off Kennedy Avenue. By the 1980s, when Shepard's Christmas story was produced, downtown Hammond was no longer the photogenic retail mecca it once was. It was a dying relic. It no longer had potential to be the setting of a Hollywood movie showcasing an economically vibrant city. Over 2 decades of uncontrolled suburban sprawl, a mass cultural shift away from downtowns to suburban shopping malls, as well as the city's inability to remedy constant freight train traffic on the downtown's northern border, all conspired to empty the downtown district.
You can't not mention this. Trains. To get into Hammond, you had to add 20 minutes because the tracks, they weren't just one simple track. They went this way. Sometimes, and they would stop. Sometimes you got called for 30 darn minutes. Oh, it was horrible, especially on Monday and Thursday night when town stayed open till 9 o'clock. Somehow there was always a train, that got you there.
The businesses that once populated downtown fled to other, much larger and more modern developments, including Hammond's own Woodmar Mall, less than 3 miles away, the River Oaks shopping mall in Calumet City, less than 4 miles away, as well as the now vanished Century Mall in Merrillville, and the massive Southlake Mall in the ever-expanding sprawl of Merrillville, Hobart. In a span of less than 20 years, downtown Hammond went from a bustling city center to practically deserted. Although it has fared better than other old downtowns in the Calumet region, it is little more than a shell of its former self. While this overpass largely remedied the railroad problem in 1995, 25 years of redevelopment efforts have produced little more than a minor spark of urban renewal. On most days, there is very little foot traffic compared to the droves that came here from the 19-teens through the 1960s. Painted-on advertisements from long ago are still visible on some buildings, albeit severely faded. A huge parking lot stands where Goldblatt's once did, yet it rarely sees more than a vehicle or two. There are a few restaurants downtown, yet apart from these exceptions, most restaurants in the district last only a couple years. The one standout was Nick and George's. From the Little Shack at 4 State Street, also known as the Cancer Clinic, to its last location on Holmen, the legendary family-owned Greasy Spoon, home to the best steak in town, closed in 2021 after over 100 years in business. Once home to nearly a dozen hotels, the last one in business, the Grand LaSalle, for many years served as long-term low-income housing and was closed by the city after 110 years. As you walk the streets, it may seem that there are more for rent signs and empty storefronts than occupied spaces. Many older buildings have become inefficient and obsolete, due either to time or neglect, while many others including some of the city's most iconic names, have been lost forever, including the very heart and soul of Old Hammond. Compared to the way it was 70 years ago, any progress today is largely seen as minor. But there is always potential. In late 2019, an ambitious 100-page master plan was proposed to transform downtown Hammond into a center of urban living. It includes reconfiguring the downtown's streets, construction of a new train station, as well as the area's first significant retail and residential construction in decades. The goal is to make downtown Hammond more walkable, a place where people can spend time and even live, instead of just drive through to get to somewhere else. The plan will take years to complete, and if realized, it will take years after that to determine its success. Heading back over the tracks, the north side has also changed over the years. Those corner stores of long ago are long gone, either sitting empty or completely demolished. The drive-in, the dance halls, the roller dome, only memories remain. The famous eateries, which once drew thousands to this corner of the city every night, have all vanished as well. But the industrial north side has also cleaned up a bit. A massive old slag dump has been transformed into a beautiful golf course and reclaimed natural ecosystem. In fact, the entire area around Lake George and Wolf Lake has been beautified. If it's been a while since you've been there, especially by way of Sheffield Avenue, you might not recognize it.
This entire area used to be industry. Trucking companies and stacks of wooden pallets as far as the eye could see.
Despite all the changes, one type of neighborhood business has stayed active. On several house-lined streets all over the north side, the corner bars are still packing them in. Mr. Joe's Tavern has been on my family's block for decades. But long before Mr. Joe's, somebody else was selling alcohol in this neighborhood.
The front was an ice cream parlor. And what they really had in the back, they were selling a hooch for, who's it, Dillinger? Who was it? I always get the two mixed up. It was whichever one of the two sold liquor around here. And the girls were told they had these black tables, like in an ice cream parlor. And the girls were told to sit at those tables. And if they saw someone that looked like the FBI, to come in and tell them. And they did a few times. But one day they were playing and they missed it. And the FBI went in and Grandma was pouring it down the toilet and they arrested her. She had to spend the night in jail, which she never forgot. Never forgot. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just like any family, our family has grown and changed over the decades. As times change, so do traditions, and some traditions ultimately end. We no longer gather as a single family for Thanksgiving. But regardless of where we all are, we all try to come back together at the family house once a year, on Christmas Eve. Our family celebrates the holiday with a traditional Polish Catholic Christmas Eve meatless meal, known as Wigilia.
Życzę Ci zdrowia, szczęścia, fortuna, niebieskie korona. Wishing you good health, success, and afterlife a heavenly crown.
Ours features mushroom soup, bob shrimp, fried perch, plenty of delicious sides, and homemade Polish staples, pierogi and paluszki. And I can't forget the sweets. homemade tchotchkes, cordials from a well-known candy factory once located in Hammond, and enough additional sugary treats to keep one wired for hours. About 3 weeks prior to Christmas Eve, several of us gather at the house for an annual pierogi day. We hand-make the dough and fillings, then roll, fill, and boil the pierogi, and we usually make sure there are a few dozen extra to be more precise, keeping a tradition alive from my grandma.
See, you gotta have it so it don't stick to your fingers anymore. So you just keep adding flour and adding and adding. We used to just put water. We didn't make it like this. Water and flour.
But this has such a better flavor.
I think so. Such a baby. Let's drink it.
So we actually made 63 plus the fingers from that other batch. But
So what are you going to do with these?
We
Got enough potatoes yet?
Right there. We only made 17 potato. This is all potato yet.
Okay.
That's it.
Christmas Eve is likely the only time each year that everybody will see each other, so we use it as a time to remember.
I forgot. I stuck a rock in. I stuck a tack. I put a tack on teacher's chair. Somebody snitched on me. I put something gum in Susie's hair. Somebody snitched on me.
La 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 la
now, but it's too late.
Somebody snitched on me. Oh, I'm getting nothing for Christmas. Cause I ain't been nothing but bad. I'm getting nothing for Christmas. Cause mommy and daddy were bad.
Mommy and daddy were bad.
So what about the Polish carols?
They make me cry. I can't
Yeah, me too.
Dzisiaj wesprem wesoło nowina, że Pana porodziła syna. Chrystus się rodzina, anioły grają, witają, pasterze śpiewają, bęben tak lękają, cura, ogłaszają.
There was this room in the front, and that's where we put the Christmas tree and all the gifts. And oh, it was so much fun. We would go every night, and see what was there. And then we had a porch off of there where Santa Claus came. And then we would sing Polish Christmas carols. And when we sang Cicha Noc, Silent Night, then he would come in.
Santa Claus comes tonight. He's here! All right!
Now, we did have different men, but over and over and over and over again, we had a friend of my father's named Roy Nordyke. And let's just say before Roy came here, he had quite a few beers. He was a riot. First of all, you couldn't get a gift unless you said a prayer. And so he would always start with the adults. But the kids, there was a toy for every kid on that porch from Santa. After he gave everybody their gifts, he would leave, and then we would hand out the rest. And we always started with the oldest, so grandfather, grandmother. The youngest had to wait forever to open their gifts.
Get around Santa.
Just take pictures.
Picture? Hey, let's make it quick because I'm sure Santa's getting pretty hot down here.
Yeah.
Don't look so happy, Santa.
Don't let your reindeer poop all over the neighborhood.
It's too late for that. It's too late for that. Ho, ho, ho!
Well, oh, my Christmas was so very special. And we would go to midnight mass, those of us who were old enough to, and kids too, not little kids, and we walked. We walked to midnight mass. Amazing when I think of it now.
Our family's Catholic faith was something that was upheld by the matriarchs and was attempted to be instilled in all of their descendants.
We were definitely Catholic. There's no doubt on that one. We were as Catholic as we were Polish, and we were as Polish as we were human. You didn't distinguish one from another. You were Polish and you were Catholic. Period. And you would never have thought of not going to church. Oh my God. Never, 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 never.
It resonated primarily from one of the tallest structures on the north side, St. Casimir Church. A centerpiece of the neighborhood, the church's steeple is visible from all over the north side. The parish was founded in 1890 by a group of about 50 Polish Catholic families. The current church, reaching a height of 12 stories and able to seat 700 people, was dedicated in 1925. The church's architecture is truly a sight to behold. From its sheer size over the surrounding neighborhood, to the intricate details present in its design. The outside has hardly changed in nearly 100 years. And while a major renovation in 1999 removed the paintings from the interior walls, the church still gleams forth an incredible beauty, regardless of your beliefs. Although the Polish community that founded the parish has dwindled, its roots are still celebrated through a weekly Polish Mass. The parish block includes the neighboring school, which has existed since the inception of the church, and where 3 generations of my family attended.
I feel like the grass might have been cursed because we were always being yelled at to get off of it. Oh man, we're going out for recess. I remember lining up against this fence. It was neon blue-green back then too. And this would be our ball field. I remember a couple guys would hit some shots all the way to that fence way out there. Whereas I was a ground ball hitter extraordinaire. I was a good base runner though, I do remember that. We'd play touch football over here in the grassy area. And then we would use those 2 posts as soccer goal. Man, it feels so weird walking through here. I haven't walked in this area for about 22 years.
While the school has seen many changes and updates, many parts are still clearly recognizable to anyone who spent time here over the years. And walking through the building today brings back plenty of memories.
Oh geez, that fire alarm is like the worst sound ever. This is where we'd have school dances, bingo days, grandparents' day. A lot of memories. We played basketball and soccer in here, had one of those huge multicolored parachute things, and rolled around on those insanely fun scooters. Aside from gym class, I remember spaghetti dinners, pancake breakfasts, band concerts, school plays, market day pickups. All took place in the gym.
For my family and I, the kitchens here are especially significant. For many years, my Aunt Lottie was the parish cook.
Oh my God, it still smells the same. Gosh, it's so weird to be in here.
From small get-togethers to large weddings, Lottie cooked up her famous fried chicken, mastacholi, Polish sausage and sauerkraut, and legendary salad dressing, among other dishes.
She may have used some of these coffee containers. I just remember the smell of fried chicken and Polish sausage and sauerkraut, her amazing salad dressing. It's all emanating from this space.
Her cooking became a family affair, as her sisters, nieces, and husband lent their sweat and strength to pull off hundreds of seamless banquets.
She was known for her salad. And people used to ask her how she made it, and she'd go, I don't know. I just put it together. I don't know how I made that. But it was delicious. It was delicious. And many times, if people wanted it, she had Shanina for her wedding, which is, very unusual. I got married in '73, which was late, and she catered my wedding. She was the head chief cook and bottle washer there for anything you had to hire out. The pastor was Father Balzan, and she and he got along really well, he was so easygoing, and that's the kind of priest she needed, because if anybody had, it would have been like this. But he was he was so easygoing, and he knew she was an excellent cook. He let her rule the kitchen, and she had certain women that she hired, and it was her sisters and her nieces, and Uncle Waller she paid to peel the potatoes. He peeled the potatoes for every wedding. And he'd get so mad at her if she didn't pay him. And he called her Babe. Yes,
he did.
And he died before she did. And I remember that day. She went to the hospital. But they liked each other. They did. And he said to her, Babe, why don't you come with me? When he died.
Aside from our 100-year history at the parish, we have all too many times shared the slow, somber walk from across the street. The neighboring funeral home has been the second-to-last resting place for many family ancestors.
Now, grandfather died at work. We got a call, and Uncle Waller took him to work every day. And he told the story of how the day that Grandpa died, Grandpa would walk into Pullman Standard this far, turn around and wave. And that day he did not turn around and wave. And he had a heart attack. He had a heart attack that day. And in those days they didn't have CPR or anything, so he died.
Many people grow up in the Calumet region with the sole goal of leaving it. Gene Shepard himself described the area as a place people never really come to, but mostly want to leave. As I wax nostalgic, it's entirely possible I've over-romanticized this place. I never said it didn't have its problems. After all, what place doesn't? Sure, it's dirty. It smells at times. Parts of it could use a fresh coat of paint. Other parts could use several coats of paint. Its winters absolutely suck. There's definitely no shortage of crime and gang activity. Our primary expressway is more often a parking lot than an actual expressway. There are plenty of empty and rundown buildings, similar to many areas throughout the Rust Belt. Smoke shops and fireworks stores greet you at literally every entrance to my city. I could make an entirely separate and much lengthier film about the decades of corruption committed by the region's elected officials. And the number of instances of people driving into buildings, especially in Munster, seems astonishing. But it's still home, and to me there will always be something unique and special about it. About pizza slices with 4 sides instead of 3, except the corners, of course. About a delicious, creamy Greek soup that is the perfect remedy for the severe Northwest Indiana winter cold, and that nobody outside the region seems to understand. About being able to buy homemade tamales, carnitas, and fresh-cut arrachera just a short drive away from the most delicious Polish sausage I've ever tasted. About that big jug of hot sauce that is so tasty, it only goes by the name Quality Brand. About those freshly made apple donuts that are still warm when you open the package. About slamming down a burger and fries and cleansing your palate with a refreshing scoop of orange sherbet. Geez, why are so many of my memories about food? About a fried Polish dumpling that is so delicious, an annual festival celebrating it draws over 100,000 visitors to a tiny town of less than 5,000 residents. About being just close enough to enjoy Chicago and its unmatchable deep dish pizza, but far enough away to not be a part of its taxes. If the mayor of Chicago in the early 90s had his way, a new urban airport would have desolated this entire area. There are those that say the region would make more sense as a part of Illinois instead of Indiana. After all, the television networks that broadcast throughout Northwest Indiana originate from the largest city in Illinois. I still remember who to call if I have an old car that might be worth money, the 3 ways to get a car to Gulf Mill Ford, and phone numbers for 2 carpeting stores are forever burned into my brain.
588-2300-M4 773-202 Luna.
And so are those low rates. At times, it does seem like we have more in common with our neighbors on the other side of the state line than we do with those within our own state. Many from the region spent enough time over there buying liquor on Sundays before Indiana finally stepped into modern times in 2018. In a historically plain and homogeneous state, the Calumet region contains the most diversity, which runs in direct contrast to Indiana's intolerant and often ignorant history on such matters. And there are definitely stereotypes about your typical Hoosiers that don't hold water in the Calumet region. Bears and Bulls country within Colts and Pacers land. For instance, there are very few corn farms around here. And like the old crow says,
Indiana Beach on beautiful Lake Schaefer, Monticello, Indiana, proving once again there is more than corn in Indiana.
I've never in my life eaten a tenderloin sandwich. I didn't even know what it was until I reached my 30s. I still don't get the appeal. And what the heck is a sugar cream pie? Apparently it's so popular it's the unofficial state pie. Personally, I'd prefer a blue ribbon winning French silk. When your primary identifier is a rat, it's likely that you will also be judged by others not from here, one way or another. Love it or hate it, the region makes living in Indiana different. For most anybody who grew up in the region, driving around the area's roads brings back memories. And for generations of people who lived here long before I did, their memories encompass places that I never knew. Like the delicious aroma emanating from the old Wonder Bread factory on Calumet Avenue, or the stacks of sweets produced from the Queen Anne Candy Factory on Hoffman, or the simple, striking beauty of the Lake County Superior Courthouse in the center of downtown Hammond at Holman and Rimbach, or the massive Douglas Park Lagoon, which is now the parking lot, or the Roby Speedway, back when the land north of Wolf Lake was its own town, the town of Roby. Unfortunately, I never got to walk down a busy Holman Avenue sidewalk, see the corner windows or smell the basement deli of Goldblatt's, spend an evening taking in films or live shows at the Parthenon, get a sundae from Walgreens, or dine at any of the well-known downtown lunch spots, or experience a massive downtown holiday parade. My downtown Hammond was a place you drove through, instead of a place you visited. There really was no reason to come to Hammond at all, unless you happened to live or work there, go to school there, or wanted to gamble away your money. Regardless, I still have plenty of fond memories about my hometown and the many communities that surround it. What's sad is that even though my memories are relatively recent, most of those places exist now only in that state, as memories. I have a very slight memory of going to Sauzer's Kittyland in Cherville, which closed in 1993. It's become one of the busiest intersections in the entire state. And the largely forgotten mini-golf course and batting cages that once bordered the Hammond side of Wolf Lake. These photos from the late 2000s show only their abandoned remnants. But I have plenty of memories from the roller dome on Gosland, of taking a few hundred laps around the rink, interspersed with some hard falls, and stopping in the bright neon seats for some salty energy. Birthday parties and yearly skate-a-thons were awesome grade school memories. The last skates were laced here in 2008. In the Woodmar district, we had the original Stardust bowling alley on Columbia, where we could strike a few billiard balls on the same pool tables from decades past, while waiting for a lane to open. Then spend a few hours crashing pins and forgetting the juvenile stressors of high school. $2 million in renovations couldn't stop Stardust from closing, also in 2008. We would go across the state line into Lansing, to Wright's Barnyard, also known as Hollywood Park, and spend a few hours and countless dollars using our tokens to collect unmanageable masses of tickets in their incredible arcade, practice some swings in their batting cages, or navigate one of their 2 scenic mini-golf courses. The Illinois Department of Transportation claimed over 20,000 square feet of the park for expressway expansion, which ultimately caused the park's closure in 2006. Or we could spend all day at the incomparable Cherville Golf and Fun Center. Over 20 acres of batting cages, go-karts, the driving range, and the best mini-golf in the region. I was never able to get a hole-in-one on that 18th hole. Progress and continued suburban sprawl claimed this beautiful place in 2007 and erased every trace of its existence. Believe it or not, it used to be right here. Despite all these losses, it's important to remember those places that still exist. Back on the north side is the former Douglas Park, renamed Pulaski Park after the Polish-American general from the Revolutionary War. This was the closest ice skating rink and swimming pool, and it was where all the local Little League teams held baseball practice. There used to be 2 poorly maintained baseball diamonds here that tended to flood rapidly. Teams would often practice here at the same time, and if your team got here late, you'd be stuck practicing in the grassy area between the diamonds. The park is a 23-acre oasis of green amongst the rows of Northside homes. But another park, literally steps from my bedroom, was where I found solace every summer. The baseball fields of Hermit's Park have been a summertime sanctuary for North Hammond youth for decades. The entire park received a much-needed renovation in the early 2010s, going from 3 ball fields to 5, with brand new dugouts, fencing, signage, actual concrete pathways throughout, and, at long last, an actual parking lot. When the park was built in the 1950s, homemaker Lottie lent her help to painting the fences, while 2 of her sons offered encouragement. Her husband, my grandpa, and my Uncle Charlie all dedicated years of service to the Hermits League. It was the complaining of some in my family that helped spearhead the addition of extra fencing to help lessen the amount of foul ball damage the house sustained over the years. And in the summer, on any given day, this is where you would find me.
So many memories out here. Winning the Little League Championship, pickup games where right field was out because you only had 3 players, standing out here in the sun all day. We would be out here for hours. It just didn't matter. If it wasn't raining, you played baseball. Surrounded by the stench of industry. There used to be an old rusty water fountain here, and it ran all the time. It bubbled up. It didn't have a mouthpiece on it.
We would put plastic water bottles on top of the stream until it shot off, until we got yelled at to stop. Back then, this was the Little League field. I think it's a softball field now. There used to be an actual pitcher's mound here. I remember a couple guys hit the concession stand. It's where you get your free hot dog and a pop after every game. Alright, now the old Babe Ruth field faced the other way, and if I remember correctly, home plate used to be right around this area. And this used to be where center field was. This is fancy here. I remember we had one metal slide, you know, the kind where you'd burn your legs sliding down, or stuck to if you were wearing shorts, and then 3 rickety old swings. This was the Pee Wee field growing up. We spent a lot of time playing games on this field when we weren't supposed to. We were way too old. It was easy home runs though. And it's not a perfectly manicured field, but who cares? It was a field, it was open, you could play all day. The cosmetics didn't matter. One of the biggest thrills of coming out here was when you found an extra ball just laying there. This entire area used to be wooded. There was nothing but trees. I can't tell you how many baseballs we lost in there over the years. And sometimes that was the end of the game. You lost your last ball, that was it. Oh my God, is that the old water fountain? You gotta be kidding me right now. They took the top off, but the piping inside? Why is this here? And every once in a while, you can still get a whiff of that North Side industry. I saw a meme on social media that said, "One day you and your friends went outside to play for the last time, and none of you knew it." It makes me think back to the days I spent out here, in the sun, playing the greatest game in the world. No cell phones, no likes, no follows, no check-ins. Just a dirty stick, a few scuffed up balls, a leather glove, and as Grantland Rice wrote, the crash of ash against the sphere. Game called. If you are from the Calumet region, this is a familiar sight and sound. Anyone who has ever lived on the north side has been caught 100 or 200 times by freight trains. Countless amounts of time and gasoline have been lost as vehicles idle in the wait line at these railroad crossings. The trains run non-stop on what are known as the Wabash tracks, all day and all night. And this is audible throughout the north side. That train horn. Yeah, we're in North Hammond. Just north of this set of tracks is a slightly less stress-inducing one. The north side is a well-traveled stop for the last electric interurban railroad line in the United States. The Chicago, South Bend, and South Shore Railroad has been carrying passengers from northwest Indiana to Chicago since 1909. In 1912, the current 90-mile route between South Bend, Indiana, and Randolph Street in downtown Chicago began running. In its 111-year history, the South Shore, as it's locally known, has carried hundreds of thousands of Northside residents to work, to shop on Michigan Avenue, to visit Chicago's many museums, or to hop on the Red Line to see one of Chicago's 2 professional baseball teams, one of which, as we all know, had not won a World Series since the year before the South Shore began operations. That was until...
This is going to be a tough play.
This really has no relevance to our story, I just really wanted to include it in this film. Anyway, a double-tracking initiative and controversial train service expansion have been proposed, which would result in the North Side becoming the main hub of the train system and convergence point of the 2 rail lines. The hope is this will result in a residential and commercial boon to the North Side, bringing in people who want to live close to Chicago without having to pay for actually living in Chicago. The project has been lauded by some for its economic potential and drawn the ire of many others, due primarily to the need for property acquisitions in the neighboring towns of Munster and Dyer, the prospect of increased crime coming from Chicago, and the project's overall cost. Originally estimated at $600 million, now well over $900 million. And while the new downtown Hammond master plan calls for a new train station in the downtown district, a major component for the proposed rebirth of the area, the official plan set forth by the South Shore no longer does, instead creating one 2.5 miles south, near 173rd Street. Whether or not any version of these plans becomes reality, the Goslin Street corridor on the north side has a vastly different look. Once bordered on both sides by single and multi-family homes, the south side of Goslin is now completely cleared, awaiting patiently for development. If everything else comes together, it will look vastly different again by the mid-2020s. More evidence that the one constant through everything, through my memories and through everyone else's memories, is change. The shallow water of the Grand Calumet River is the official dividing line between Hammond's north side and the Central District. It was on these banks over 170 years ago that the first Hammond settlement began, long before there was even a city here, and it is where our journey comes to an end. It might be difficult to understand for the outsider, or even many insiders, but there is something about this place that will always draw me back, in spite of its flaws. There are no John Cougars writing songs about this medium-sized town, but maybe this little film will suffice for now. You can definitely try to go home again, but as the years go by, and as my life has led me out of the region, I've come to the realization that you really can't. As friends move on, as family members pass on, and as the places that meant so much to your childhood are destroyed, home never feels the same. There may come a day when I will feel like a complete stranger here, searching for that past that I will never find. And there may even be a day when I leave here for the last time and not realize it. For my memories, and for yours, I'm hopeful that some of these little reminders of what we had will stand the test of time. This was just my story. Everyone has one. My grandmother and her sisters have a legacy of over 70 descendants scattered throughout the United States, each one writing their own story.
It was a neighborhood thing. Yeah, everything was neighborhood. Family and neighborhood, church. Yeah, being Catholic, being Polish, being a member of the family, living in North Hammond. Those things identified you. They characterized you. They made us the way we were. And despite the fact that we are different, there are many ways in which we are alike. As you probably realize, the more you're a member of our family, there are many things that we're alike in.
As great as it is to document these memories, there are countless others that are forgotten. Memories and stories of the people and places that came before that will never be known, lost to time and to mortality before they could be preserved. You never know what you don't know until you can no longer ask.